Horror games have been a genre that has been booming since before people were even streaming games, but streaming has definitely helped to boost their success and popularity. There's something about watching an adult man freak out and scream into a microphone as he tries to accomplish some in-game goal, and avoid the horror that likely lurks just around the corner that compels us. The human condition in general is a weird one. We aim to survive, to feel safe, and yet we enjoy that rush of adrenaline that sheer terror brings us. Which is why horror video games and watching others play horror games has become so popular. It allows you to experience fear in a safe way. Welcome back, my fellow gamers. This is Top 10 Gaming and I'm your host Amanda McKnight. Today we're going to be exploring the world of horror games and specifically ideas that would make for a great addition to our ever-expanding encyclopedia of horror game titles, as we count down the top 10 scary ideas that need to be video games. And if you feel like you have a great idea for a horror game, share it in the comments below. Alright, let's get counting. Number 10. Shrek the Horror. Shrek is one of those strange, unexplained phenomenons where for some reason everyone loves it, or loves to make fun of it. The love that the world has for Shrek has become a weird, twisted internet love, but one that I feel could make a good basis for a weird indie horror game. Of course, we do have the very short indie swamp sim game, but I am talking about something a bit more fleshed out than just collecting layers of onions while running away from Shrek in the swamp. Something more complex than just a sort of a Slenderman game, if you will. Maybe instead you play as someone trying to take refuge in Shrek's swamp and are forced to face and defeat the ogre, sneaking around to survive until you finally have discovered the resources you need to construct a weapon to take him down. It's definitely a weird idea, but based on how quickly Shrek turned into a cult classic because of a meme movement that created a bizarre fan base of Shrekies, it could also be insanely successful. Also, we don't have enough ogres in horror games right now. What's up with that?
What are you doing in my swamp?
Number 9. Monster House. I've always wanted to play a game where instead of you being the victim, you were the horror, the monster that was stalking in the night. And anyways, being a victim or a survivor is really all about perspective. In the film Monster House, the house has its own motives, and is possessed by the vengeful spirit of Constance the Giantess. But what if we had a game based around this premise but more horrific? What if you played a game where you were the haunted house, in complete control of scaring all those who came inside, either fighting against a particular group of visitors, trying to scare them off for fear of them destroying you or your property, or instead a horror simulator game where you build and play as your own custom horror house. I think that might be a fun spin on a horrific genre. Number 8. Animatronics, let's go! Speaking of the idea of playing as a villain in a horror game, it would be pretty neat to see FNAF turn into an official one versus many game where you could actually play as a terrifying animatronic and scare your friends. Or even just a solo survival horror where you are playing as the spirit of a dead child trapped in the animatronic and trying to escape. It could provide some interesting context for just why those animatronics feel the need to be so murderous, while also being a creepy storyline to explore all on its own. Number 7. Fatale. Fatale is a graphic novel that could lend well to the feeling of a film noir style horror game. Think of something like LA Noire, but as a horror game, and one where you could maybe also play multiple characters throughout time. Or you could divide the series up into different games for each time period explored in the story, I guess. Fatale is the story of a mysterious and deadly woman, Josephine, and the horrific fate that befalls all of those who fall in love with her, as she has ties to the occult and is constantly being pursued by occultists who aim to control her and use her and her powers for their own insidious means. The narrative is great, and it would be cool to see it used in an interrogation-filled, puzzly, mystery horror game where you are constantly being pursued by violent occultists and find yourself sometimes able to occasionally see supernatural monsters who may have always been near you, hiding in plain sight. Number 6. Vampires. Where are the vampires in video games these days? While vampires may have been massively popular just a few years ago, they've recently seemed to vanish, and not just when it comes to their reflection. It would be cool to see a horror game featuring these kinds of famous creatures of myth return to us. No, I'm not talking about a Twilight game, of course. That wouldn't even be scary. It'd be scary how terrible that would be, I'm sure. I'm talking about a game inspired by something like the newest Dracula miniseries from Netflix, or more feral vampires like the ones featured in 30 Days of Night. Number 5. I Know What You Did Last Summer. When it comes to older films, we've seen some success when revisiting their premise in a video game form. Lots of classic horror films have seen themselves immortalized as a game. One that I feel like could be really cheesy, but also really great, is I Know What You Did Last Summer, or even something like Scream. That idea of a slasher meets teen film could be the right amount of humor meets horror to ensure its success, and the urban legend of a man with a hook for a hand could make for a perfect monster design. Number 4. Siren Head, the full game. We've had a lot of small indie Siren Head games. We've seen a lot of Siren Head in mods for games, but one thing we are still waiting on is Siren Head to actually appear in a full game, all of its own. Considering how terrifying and popular this monster creature has become, we really need to see a full game celebrating it soon. Otherwise, what are we doing with our lives? The silver lining is that there are quite a few fairly good Siren Head small indie games, so hopefully at one point we'll see one of them further developed and extended into a full game. Number 3. Saw vs. Cube. So while we have had a Saw horror game in 2009, it also proved to be pretty terrible. Also, that was 2009! That was over 10 years ago. That's a long time. The game has not aged well, and it was far too close to the films to feel like it was really doing anything new. But I think the premise of Saw, something inspired by the idea, or even inspired by the Canadian indie horror film Cube, which is kind of similar, could be interesting. Although Half Dead 2 seems to have a bit of a Cube feel. Actually, it has a lot of a Cube feel. But also Half Dead 2 is considered to be a pretty great game, so maybe if you combine the idea of Cube and Saw, we could come up with something new that would be also well received, and also do something new for that type of horror. Number 2. Medieval Blair Witch. I personally really enjoyed playing Blair Witch, but I also felt that the glitches prevented me from enjoying it as much as I could have. What would be really cool is to see a witch game like this did right, but maybe a game where instead you are a witch being pursued by those who are hunting you, and perhaps you don't even know if you're a witch or not, as you have a slipping grip on reality, similar to the PTSD episodes Ellis suffers in Blair Witch. And add in a Salem witch trials kind of feel. Let's take this all the way back. But of course, I'd love to see it more set in medieval times as opposed to pioneering times, just because we don't have a lot of horror games from that time period. And good news for a horror game set in pioneer days with witches, we'll likely be seeing some of that soon with the newest Dark Pictures game releasing later this fall, Little Hope. Number 1. Five Nights at Freddy's Party Time. In the FNAF franchise, we usually get to play as a security guard, and while the games are horrifying just from the perspective of someone trying to do their job, avoid death, and earn a paycheck, there is lots of other FNAF lore that could be explored when it comes to the story of these games. The newest installment is rumored to be about a FNAF location in a mall where you will play as a mall security guard, where the animatronics potentially are programmed to help you, but also occasionally malfunction and suspect you as an intruder and probably try to murder you. A perspective we have yet to visit though in this franchise is that of those who appear most vulnerable. The kids that interact with these animatronics. We've heard about incidents, the Bite of 87, but we've only revisited such incidents in minigames. How scary would it be to play as a lone kid or group of kids trying to avoid getting attacked during a birthday party where you maybe get separated from your friends, or I don't know, lost in the restaurant? That sounds like it could be even more scary than anything we've played before when it comes to Five Nights. Maybe it could be 5 birthdays instead, and your character's been invited to one every night of the week. It's a lot of birthdays. Maybe even at different FNAF locations, actually. That could be cool.
Yeah, there's no way in hell I'm gonna be killing that kid. I'll just clock out for the day.
You murdered 3 children.
Yes, I did. Thank you for watching.
Thanks so much for watching. What are some of your favorite horror games? What do you think would make a great monster or antagonist in a future horror game? Are there any myths, creepypastas, or urban legends that you would like to see make their way into a game? Let us know in the comments below. And while you're on your way down there, click subscribe if you haven't already, and ring our bell so you can stay in the know when it comes to all of our gaming content. This has been Top 10 Gaming, and I'm your host Amanda McKnight, reminding you to keep on gaming on. Pew pew!